Dr. Katherine Chavigny earned her PhD in history from the University of Chicago. She is an associate professor emerita of American history at Sweet Briar College. She is a U.S. Fulbright Scholar teaching on the social and cultural history of the USA from the American Revolution through World War II. And her current Fulbright project is about the history of American democracy through 1940. So as a Fulbright Scholar, she is currently in Georgia as a visiting professor at the Institute of American Studies at Tbilisi State University. She is therefore lecturing at TSU, IPSU, and other institutes on the above topics.
One of the problems with the election of 2016 was that the United States and the people they took their eye off the ball. They had forgotten somehow about Russian tactics of, the government should have known, but it's very, very, I can't imagine. The Ukrainians are very aware of this and have been preparing to protect themselves against cyber attacks and hacking. Citizens in the post-Soviet socialist republics are, it seems like they feel like they know these Russian propensities, if that's the right word, and are dedicated not to never be fooled by them. So, I don't know if your students have questions about whether this happened. Certainly, the United States and the media discounted Russian interference. They would call it meddling at best. But Timothy Snyder, he argues in this book, The Road to Unfreedom, what were the ideological tools that Putin was using to formulate his imperial aggression, and how did it reach into the United States as well as Europe? And Kathleen Hall Jamieson argues very specifically about tactics and timing and persuasion. So I have a sort of a series of questions, which please interrupt me at any time, because this is not my bailiwick, talking about, how Putin regards the United States and the EU. According to Snyder, he sees the West, the EU, and the United States as a spiritual enemy of Russia, that he's been formulating this pan-Slav empire, notion of empire, using materials for Russian nationalist ideologues going all the way back to, I don't know, even before the Russian Revolution. Did the Russian government intend to use misinformation to promote divisions with the potential for causing violence in the United States? Yes, there's lots of information that was the intention, that fomenting war without using weapons or armaments in the United States by Russia would be so cool. This says this think tank called Izborsk Club that included Alexander Dugin, whose daughter was, I think, blown up. He's a Russian nationalist, ideologue, and the fascist novelist Alexander Prokhanov. You know, there are documents that show that they were thinking like that. There are documents from the Russian military that this is like an explicit explicit goal that is being reached for. I mean, they had previously used misinformation and social media trolling to shape American opinion and that of the legacy news, to adopt the pro-Russian explanation of what they were doing in Crimea. You know, to say, oh, well, to sort of soft pedal it. They hacked the server of the Ukraine Central Election Commission in 2014, were deterred. But I mean, now how about the view of Trump as a manipulable potential asset for these misinformation propaganda campaigns? Yes, I mean, they knew that they contributed to his the impression that he liked to foster, that he was a successful businessman, that Russian I don't know the terms, is that there's an institution called let's see, what is it? The Internet Research Agency that works with the SFB, which is Putin's internal intelligence. I mean, that's that network that he comes out of, monitoring Soviet citizens, and also the GRU, which is a military intelligence state operation. They have this sort of agency of cyber nerds who they give tasks to, and they added an American department with staffed by 90 new employees. It's in they're in St. Petersburg, but in 2013, I think it was, and they also hired American operatives who did not know they were being hired by an arm of the FSB and the GRU. They didn't know it. Yes, all these things happen. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to get a little more water. Okay. Russians had long regarded Trump as a man who could be easily manipulated. They promoted his reputation as a successful businessman. They looked at his long record of exploiting socially inflammatory issues that were racially denigrating. You know, Trump campaigned. Trump was a main disseminator of the lie that Obama was not born in the United States, the sort of birther conspiracy. Before that, he accused these African American boys, the Central Part 5, of a brutal beating of a white woman. And it turned out to be untrue. So supporting Trump's election, the intent was there. And did they conduct an extensive hacking campaign, including getting into the various a couple of committees, the Democratic National Committee, and there's one more. hacking, getting emails, and then releasing them at strategic, well, at moments where either to distract attention from Trump, as when the Access Hollywood tape from 2005, where he bragged about how his status made women sexually available to him, or moments when, or at other points where it really damaged Hillary Clinton's campaign, could really damage Hillary Clinton's campaign. Did coordinated attacks that use stolen material released at a particular time, and then the impact of that stolen material sort of shaped and disseminated through social media. Yes, they did that. The question that is at the center of this is like, well, okay, they hacked, they released, bots on Twitter that took advantage of the retweeting capacity to amplify certain mischievous interpretations of something that Hillary Clinton said, but so what? How do we know how do we know that materially helped Trump to defeat Hillary Clinton, given that she still won the popular vote? She just lost the Electoral College vote. And Kathleen Jameson book, Cyber War, how Russian hackers and trolls helped elect an American president, what we can't do and don't know. I don't usually read titles of books by scholars, or at least not the whole thing, but she, by including what we can't do and don't know, it gives you a flavor of how careful her analysis is. And what kinds of tools, she's bringing to bear communication scholarship about how the news can and cannot, has and has not influenced elections in the past. And then she goes through the tactics sort of in a timeline to map almost the falling fortunes, the diminishment of popularity of Hillary Clinton as a candidate. So it was very coordinated, well-timed steal and release to WikiLeaks, who was perfectly happy to distribute these emails, and then also to using fake sites on Facebook and news sources. There are thousands of them, and also amplifying certain, misleading extracts of what Hillary Clinton said. She demonstrates that real damage was done. It was a massive infiltration of Facebook, unbeknownst to Facebook. It was a massive infiltration of Twitter by fake accounts and bot amplification via trending. using these social media
now we have the massive infiltration of Twitter by the owner.
Well, yeah, Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I wonder how far the self-destruct spiral will go today. But this Twitter and Facebook, this was all new to them. They did not suspect, which is just, it's kind of, I mean, this is a new technology, but it's kind of incredible to me. So divisive messages, you know, that there were and it was micro-targeted. A lot of these pages and Twitter retweets were targeted to specific geographical states that were in contention. You know, it's like we couldn't tell whether Trump or Clinton would win, and also to through the algorithms of Facebook, and also to information that Russians purchased on how to target specific populations. That's the basis of Facebook's mainstream of revenue, advertisements, that they can help a business micro-target their ads to best effect. Well, the Russians just use that and would either design divisive impersonating people, impersonating Black Lives Matter, or impersonating or misquoting Clinton and showing her with that Muslims supported her. Really scurrilous stuff that showed that Russians were paying very, very close attention to what was happening in the United States and the many, many media sources, as well as stealing electoral strategy, tactics and strategy from the Democratic National Committee, from other, Democratic state committees, stealing demographic data that helped them target, and simply following the media's, the traditional legacy media's tremendous fascination with polling numbers, which were identifying hot spots, problem spots. And the Russians just took all of that, paying close attention. Now let's say hacked voter model. See, this language is very foreign to me. They hacked voter models from battleground states, including Pennsylvania and Florida, from the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Access to punditry, toolkits designed to help advertisers identify prospective customers. She also makes some points that while the press isn't very successful at telling people what to think, they are very successful in telling readers and viewers what to think about. So, this speaks to the limits of what is determinable without possibly more extensive real-time polling data or something like that. But the Russians were pushing, think about this, not that. Don't think about Access Hollywood and the nasty, vulgar things that Trump said. Think about how Hillary Clinton said one thing in private to Wall Street bankers, but seems to be saying another thing in public about Wall Street bankers. Can she be trusted? Unfortunately, the mainstream legacy media unwittingly, uncritically picked up a lot of these this language and these talking points at critical junctures in the campaign and was successful in getting the media and those who are listening to them to refocus on Hillary Clinton and her shortcomings. And the media has admitted fault in the aftermath of this. It's like, oh geez, we just were, I mean, the New York Times, we weren't thinking. Sunday morning, the hosts of Sunday morning news shows where important people are invited on, they grilled John Podesta, who was some high muckety-muck in Hillary Clinton's campaign, about whether she was, she looks to be someone who is not reliable. And he didn't have very good answers. So, I mean, her conclusion is that the Russians did help to swing the election, but they were also helped by a number of other factors. An electorate that was already polarized and had been primed since 2010 and the Tea Party movement to oppose the Democrats in very, very active ways. There was the American people helped. The legacy media helped by adopting framing and linguistic, phraseology that had been introduced and amplified by the Russians and amplified by social media.
Let's continue.
Okay, I just wanted to flag that last, or at least expand a little bit on that last comment about President Obama, who, I mean, he was warned about this, and in October of 2015, or is it 2016? 2016? Anyway, in the October, just before the election, about Russian hacking, and his response, I mean, he had a response. He closed 2 Russian compounds in New York and Maryland and expelled 35 Russian operatives. But he did not call attention to this. He did not call attention to the fact that agencies of the government had become aware of Russian meddling, interference, and that the impressions that people were getting had been shaped and actively created and implanted created and disseminated in a manner that was intended to get their attention, get the news media's attention, and to turn them against Hillary Clinton. She was not the greatest campaigner in the world, and obviously the Democratic National Committee, which allowed itself to be hacked, didn't seem to have its act together. But nonetheless, something very serious happened, and all of which has been confirmed by Senate reports, most of which are classified, it was denied at first by Trump's administration, but eventually even Trump himself acknowledged it, and that there was serious hacking and took some sort of actions that demonstrated his. And then there's of course the Mueller report, which although it did not it arrived at the conclusion that there was no indictable offenses committed by Trump and Trump's campaign, or at least not any that the Justice Department was willing to pursue. But it did indict, I think it was 19 Russians, some of whom have been tried for being trolls, essentially being internet trolls. And some of them were deported, some of them went to jail. And so, Jameson has done an incredibly good job. I've never read any academic book that was so focused and so analytically just precise about such an important issue. Anyway, I very much recommend looking at her book for a first-rate example of social science. They're much rarer than we would like.
Yeah,
Okay.
I look forward to reading both of those books, and I think they will help me articulate some of my impressions that I've had over the past 10 or 15 years a lot better. And I appreciate you providing a summary, basically, of some of the main arguments here. And I just wanted to add my little contribution. It's sort of like, it reminds me of a detective or something. They have the motive.
Mm-hmm.
And they've expressed their intents. Mm-hmm. They've said we've got a motive, and they've expressed their intent in formal documents. Even if you want to avoid looking at Dugin's philosophy or something, they've expressed their intents.
Snyder does. He's all over it.
Yeah, but even if you don't want to go that route, they've expressed their intent in many ways, and it's documented. They've expressed their fears, which I started to cover in one article, like the Russian perception of the Western threat through an analysis of their strategic documents, which I've only done from 93 to 2000 so far. I've got to do part 2, but I mean, they've expressed who they see as the enemy very clearly. They've made an enemy for themselves, and they've also expressed the intent to use these kinds of information, I don't know, psychological weapons, I guess, and so on. And the victim's wounds look a whole lot like the kinds of wounds you would receive if you were attacked by such weapons. And, it's a serial killer, so we've got similar cases and similar wounds on similar bodies all around its periphery. And I remember being about how old am I? So by the early 2000s, I was entering my early 20s, I guess. And so, the racial division was there, but there was some kind of air of things moving away, and there was just sort of, people were just sort of seeming to get along better, and it seemed to be encouraged in media. But if I talked to my African American friends, they would say that there's still problems, and I would see this too. But there was sort of some kind of integrative processes happening through different parts of society. It seemed like to me, as a young adult, traveling around the country all over the place by myself. and going to different places. And then somehow it seemed like something kind of changed and it started regressing and people started getting more polarized and there was lots of hatred. And I remember people attributing this to the rise of social media. And in one sense, that's true. And in that more people were able to express their opinions, and before they didn't have such avenues of expression. So that's naturally going to bring out a lot of dirty laundry and bring up old grudges and skeletons in the closet. But it just felt like somehow this was being manipulated and somebody was pushing polarization and division in the society as well. And later it just seemed to me that must have been the Russians all along, at least in part. And then I also remember sort of observing the rise of, because I was sitting writing a master's thesis in my room in Tbilisi. So I'd just go through YouTube and stuff like that. And I started seeing all this conspiracy stuff come up and blog talk radio and YouTube channels. And I just would entertain myself by listening to all of them. And I started noticing this it just sounded like Russian narratives to me. I just started getting quite concerned that they were infiltrating our subconscious through these conspiracy theory type regular guys talking, and Alex Jones and stuff like that. And the interesting thing about that movement is it evolved over time. At first it was, we distrust the authorities and we can't trust the establishment. And then it turned in, we can't trust the Democrats. And it's almost like they corralled they convinced a certain demographic to stop trusting reality at all. Like the universe is not what you think.
And that's a very totalitarian strategy if you can get people there. I mean, but it's here in America, in a free society, it's like, wow.
Well, I mean, it works anywhere because people are people and we all have a similar psyche somehow architecturally. But like, it was this, well, I call it, so I'm going to say this online now. Hopefully no one, I can patent that now. I think I call it antimatter universes, like, or what is it? Now I forgot my catchphrase. But like, just like you have antimatter universes, now we've got reality and anti-reality universes. So you've got one universe of, people trying to basically see things as they are, attempting to, doing their best. And you have an entire, it's literally just the opposite. It's the polar opposite. It's the antimatter universe, where every single claim you make, there's a counterclaim. Every single claim about reality, there's an opposite reason why that's a lie. And it's having been raised in a cult where they trained you to have an answer for everything, you basically have this anti-reality universe created, and there's an answer to everything that could possibly come up. And people are constantly obsessed with this. They're watching this. They learn more and more detail, so that anytime anybody says, here's a fact, or here's an alternative viewpoint, oh, you're a sheeple, they have their own special language. This is also a feature of cults. There's I'm not saying it is a cult. I'm just saying there's certain mind control, brainwashing aspects that you can find in there that, well, you're a sheeple, or you didn't have, their own code language, I don't know, red pill or different colored pills. And then there's an answer to everything. And ultimately, and then there's constant messaging, constant exposure to this messaging.
Yeah.
And so you're always getting this reinforcement. And then it's all, I don't want to go too far down this road, but it's emotional, not logical at certain points. And you get, what was I going to say? This, I don't remember exactly what I wanted to say, but something probably along the lines of, you've basically got this entire worldview built up in your mind, and it's the complete opposite. And then of what's actually happening. And so you can't take in new information or maybe you can eventually, but it sort of walls off other information. And so everything is interpreted according to this paradigm. So you got that paradigm, and you've got that. Well, CNN or BBC said this kind of news thing. Yeah, but that's the manipulation tool of the lizard elites or something. So you just have this in every level, in every sphere of thinking. And I noticed that kind of taking over our national subconscious in, as you said, not everybody's mind, but a specific a micro targeting. And this moved into this movement turned anti-democrat, and then it turned anti-Clinton. And I just thought, oh my goodness, Alex Jones is going to get Trump elected. And it's and I remember telling my dad and some family members, and they're just like, oh, we can handle this, this is nothing. And well, we almost didn't handle it. I mean, we had a coup. It was a very close election in what was it, last time we had an election, 2020. So and meanwhile the whole society is growing increasingly polarized. I don't know, as a historian, maybe we've always been so polarized, but it seems like there's been a lot of help in getting us polarized.
Yeah, I mean, the saturation of certain sectors of American society and culture with these types of messages, it does feel, I mean, it feels a little bit new, although I suppose if you were a Russian revolutionary or someone who was really, really involved in the discussions, the international discussions about socialism and communism and strategy, like political strategy and things like that. It seems like there's a wider net is being cast because of talk radio, because of the internet and social media than ever before. I'd like to think that these people are that people who join the cult are isolated and but I don't think isolated, and that's why they're like socially atomized, and that's why they batten on to these ideas. But but a few words I want to say that the elections in 2020 and 2022 in America, they went well, and I strongly doubt that American elections, or at least that I strongly doubt that Russians will have a similar success for a while, or ever. The problem is the American people, as you say, enough of them are primed to take in conspiracy theories. That is our problem.
But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I would blame ourselves entirely, but
no, I don't. I think that there's no, absolutely not. Some democratic institutions did really well during all of this, and during the subsequent elections. So it's a very complicated situation.
But along with this sort of this really terrible polarizing tendencies just on every topic, like I don't see people looking for compromise solutions anywhere. It's just really polarized or black and white or something in so many different areas of discussion. But along with that, I just see sort of through time, I had seen Russian narratives kind of seeping into the arguments. And then this results in lawmakers getting elected who are promoting Russian arguments. And then that further legitimizes these narratives, like, why are we wasting our money saving Ukraine? They should solve their own problems, or, whatever they're saying. And I just, and what that will, and another, just one of these traditional counter arguments, that already prepared, they saw it somewhere on Facebook or social Reddit or something, they can repeat it back out. Well, we didn't need the Russians' help. It's all our own fault. We did this to ourselves. Well,
oh, no. There needs to be action taken to oppose these sorts of these Russian cyber war campaigns. You can't just like lay back and say, well, we'll give therapy to those in the Republican Party and the MAGA Republicans.
No, we need a better thinking. And also, you were mentioning something about I really like them. I'm sort of doing a little research on the Georgian elections, just superficially. And I was looking at all the survey data and poll data, and I was like, oh, this is, I'm still figuring this out, but there's lots of neat, stuff you can figure out there, and who you can target and who you can message, especially if you've got a very small margin that you want to just keep, that all you need is a small margin or something like that. And so I thought it was interesting that you mentioned this, the Russians were really interested on that and focusing on that. And we need to keep that in mind when we're thinking about their tactics in the future for our country, which is not immune, and for the countries in the periphery when their elections are coming. We should be savvy to what they can do, and take what we learned from the US elections to future elections all around the world. And the other thing you mentioned, which was interesting, was the timed release of certain materials. And it reminded me of the 2012 elections in Georgia, which I'm not saying this, I'm not comparing it I'm not comparing it as an analog. I have not researched that, and I don't know exactly what happened, but the only part I'm comparing is how effective that can really be, because it was about, if I recall correctly, about 10 days before the election that really scandalous and horrific tapes, suddenly appeared. And this, as I recall, it did seem to basically swing the election in the Georgian dream direction. I don't know if I don't know if at this point whether they would have won anyway or not, but it was a very big scandal, and it probably had a big impact on voters.
It had, some, yes, yeah, I see what you're saying.
So that can be quite an effective tactic if we think about a dramatic case.
I mean, and Jameson would completely agree with you.
And I'm not saying they did it on purpose or something. I'm not saying, I don't know if it spontaneously appeared or anything. I just, such events certainly can have an impact. Please continue.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I hope that the Democratic Party and its various organizations, various political organizations at the national level who are supporting, strategies for their candidate or candidates are much more savvy about what they're doing. Because, that the Russians, they did try to they hacked into about 40 local and I think it was local state election sites They didn't get anywhere. Because none of the voting machines are connected to the internet anymore. But you know, that's a lot of hacking work. And it's everyone needs to get more savvy.
Yeah, and I was just I meant to sort of end my little comments there with, like, I think with some of our over focus on these little technical things, like did they hack or did they leak, or in our I don't know, maybe overconfidence in our abilities to withstand things, and our underestimation of Russia, which seems to be chronic.
Yes. Yeah.
We're always missing the bigger, we're repeatedly missing the bigger picture, and we're really missing the just rabid, I guess, hostility of an enemy that we continue not to take seriously, and I think will continue to try to disrupt whatever it can, however it can,